So now you're familiar with the basic workflow of making a line using different tools. We'll move on to learn about different draw and modify tools, and then we'll make a simple drawing using those tools. So you already know about line. Let's talk about polyline. So I'll go to polyline, and as you can see, I have the dynamic input active, which I prefer to keep deactivated. So I'll press F12 function key and it will be deactivated like this. And now I'll click at a point, then next, 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 and so on, and enter to exit this command. So this one is polyline. Let's go to line again, and once again I'll do the same, and we have the line here. So the basic difference between these two tools is if you select polyline, the complete set of lines will be selected, as this one is a connected curve, but not in case of line. If you select line, only that particular segment will be selected and all of these are separate. So that's the first and the basic difference between line and polyline tool. So I'll select them and I'll delete both the drawings. Now to make the circle, you can select the circle tool, then click at a point, and now type in the radius value. So I'll type 100 as the radius and I'll press enter, and here we have it. So we have the circle of radius 100 unit. You can also type in the diameter. So I'll go to circle again, I'll click at a point, and now instead of radius, I will go to the command line and I'll click on this diameter. And now AutoCAD will prompt for the diameter value. So if I type 100 now, it will make a circle of radius 50 or dia 100. And here we'll have the circle of dia 100. Now similarly, we have the arc tool. Now using arc tool, you can make 3-point arcs using first, second, and third point. And also there are other features which you can use to make different kind of arcs. And it just depends on the kind of workflow and the drawing that you have, and depending upon that you can select from any of these arc tools. Similarly for the circle, we have 6 different ways of making circle, and it will just depend on your workflow, and depending on that you can select the type of circle that you need. Now let's move to the rectangle tool. So using rectangle tool, you can obviously make a rectangle. In this case, click at a point and then click at second point and you'll have your rectangle. So first point and second point. Now this one is obviously not a precise way of making rectangle. So if you want to make it precise, then activate the dynamic input by pressing F12 and go to rectangle, so that we have this tooltip now, and click at a point and now type in the length and width. So I'll type 100 for the length, and then I'll press tab key and I'll type 50 for the width and I'll press enter, and here we have it. So the length is 100 and the width is 50, and that's the rectangle which we need. Now you can move your complete drawing area using pan tool, as you know that. Just press and hold your mouse wheel and pan it around. But what if you want to move only selected drawings? For example, if you only want to move this circle, then you can use the tool right here on the modify panel called move. Select move tool. Now select the object that you want to move and press enter. Now select the center or any other point if you want, and then move it to your desired point. So click, let go, then again click, and it will move it. I'll do it again. So I'll go to move, then I'll select this circle, or maybe let's select multiple objects. So I'll select this rectangle and this circle. I'll press enter, and now you need to start from a point. So I'll click at a point, maybe here randomly, and it will pick your objects from that point. Now click at the next point where you want to drop it. There we have it. Now the copy command works in a similar way, but in this case, instead of moving the object, it will create copies. So I'll go to copy, I'll select the circle and I'll press enter. Now I'll select the center of this circle for picking this, and now look at this, we still have the original object, but now a new copy is also made. Now click at this next point, and you'll have multiple copies of the same object. Now to exit this command, press escape key. So I'm gonna now select all of these things that we don't need and I'll delete them. Also, I'll deactivate this dynamic input using this status bar. You can also deactivate it using F12 function key. We will now work with simple drawing here. Now, let's talk about rotate command. So here we have the rotate tool. Now select the rotate tool and select the object that you want to rotate. Now I'll press enter and the command line will prompt you to specify the base point. Whenever you are in doubt, whenever you don't know the next set of steps, look at the command line. It will always prompt you with the next set of steps. So in this case, you need to specify the base point. So I'll select this one as the base point. And now your object will start rotating along that base point. Now look at the command line. It is prompting you to specify the rotation angle. So let's type 30 and enter, and look at this. So now the rectangle is rotated to an angle of 30 degrees with respect to the original rectangle. It was horizontal, it's now 30 degrees with respect to that. Now let's add a circle inside this rectangle somewhere here. And also I'll make a straight line here like this. All right, and I will talk about the mirror tool, which is right here. So using mirror tool, you can make a mirror image of any object. In this case, I'll select this rectangle and the circle. I'll press enter. And now you need to specify a mirroring line. So mirroring line in this case is this one, this line. So I'll click on this point and then this point. And we'll have this kind of mirror image. So using mirror tool, you can make mirror images like this. So press enter to finish the command and you'll end up with mirror image of this original object where this was the mirroring line. So mirroring line is not always necessary. You can even make mirrors without the mirroring line. So I'll go to mirror, I'll select these two objects, press enter, and now I'll randomly click at 2 points. Maybe you can make it aligned if you want, like this, but I'll just make straight lines and I'll press enter. And we'll still have the mirrored copies. Now let's talk about fillets. So we have a tool here called fillet, and using fillet you can make the corners of any sharp drawing rounded. So I'll go to fillet and now I'll go to radius, and now I'll specify the radius as, let's say, 5 unit and enter. Now I'll click on this line and this line, and look at this, a small radius of 5 unit will be applied. Let's do it again. So I'll go to fillet and now I'll click on this radius option and type in the radius value. In this case, I'll type a bigger value, maybe 12 unit, and enter. And now select the first line and the second line and you'll have this kind of fillet. Now let's make a line that intersects these objects like this. And now we'll talk about the trim tool. So like this. So we have a lot of intersecting curves here. And now if you want to trim some unwanted geometries, for example, if you want to trim this part of the line or this part, you can use the trim tool right here. So I'll go to trim. And now after selecting trim, just press enter key. This is a step which you're most likely to forget. So in this case, select trim and then press enter. Don't forget to press enter key right after selecting the trim tool. Now click on the part of the drawing that you want to trim. So in this case, I'll click on this line and look at this. It will trim it up to the next boundary. If I click here, it will trim it up to the next boundary. The similar thing will happen for the circle as well. If I click here, it will trim it up to the next boundaries. So using trim tool, you can trim the objects up to the next available boundaries like this. And that's trim tool. Now, finally, let's talk about a tool called offset. So I'll go to rectangle and I'll add a fillet of radius 10 on this corner and I'll press enter. Pressing enter will just repeat your last command. And I'll select this one. Okay, there we have it. Now I'll go to offset, and offset tool will make another copy of your object which is geometrically similar but at a certain distance. So now I'll type in offset distance of, let's say, 2 unit. I'll press enter. Now I'll select this boundary and I'll move it outwards. So if I click inside, it will make an offset copy just inside. If I move outside, it will make the offset copy outside, just like this. Again, I'll go to offset, and this time I'll add a bigger value of, let's say, 10 unit for the offset distance. I'll select the same line, I'll click outside and look at this. We have this offset again. So that's our offset tool. Now let's talk about the object snap status bar option, which is a really important status bar option. And without using object snap, you won't be able to make precise drawings. So whenever you select any command and move your cursor close to any point, for example, in this case, I'm moving close to these intersection points, also called the end point, AutoCAD will automatically snap your cursor to those points, and you'll also see this tooltip with endpoint and this green box. So this is happening because we have object snap activated here, and on the object snap, if you click on this arrow, you'll see list of points which AutoCAD recognizes, and from this list we have endpoint, midpoint, center, intersection and insertion selected. So currently only these points will show up when you bring your cursor close to any point. In this case, look at the midpoint. It is now checked. I'll just uncheck this. Now I'll go to this point. We have endpoint here, and I'll just click here, and now I'll move my cursor close to the midpoint of this line. But look at this, we don't have anything. Now even if I click here, which is very close to the midpoint, look at my drawing. It will snap the line to this point because this was highlighted. It won't snap to midpoint. Now I'll press Ctrl Z and I'll go to this object snap arrow and I'll activate midpoint. Also make sure that this tool is also active here on your status bar. This should be checked. Now if I go to midpoint, look at this, it will be highlighted and will show the midpoint. So now we can clearly click like this. So this is the object snap. Now other points in object snap include the center. If I move close to the center of an arc or a circle, it will recognize that. Other points are the intersection point. For example, if I go here, it will recognize the intersection of these two lines or any other curve and so on. If you deactivate object snap, you won't be able to snap to these points, and look at this. Even if I move close to this point, it won't recognize it. No endpoints, no midpoints. So it should be checked if you want these points. So now we are fairly equipped with the basic draw and modify commands of AutoCAD, and using these tools we'll now make our 2D drawing. So this is what we are going to make. So this drawing here in AutoCAD. So for this drawing, I will start with the line tool. So I'll go to line and I'll click at a point, and now I'll make a line of length 18 unit, which is this one, 18 unit. So 18 and enter again. Now look at this line. It's kind of very tiny, so I'll zoom in to bring it here in the drawing area. Now we see it clearly. So now I'll go to circle and I'll make all these circles. So dia 8.2, dia 4.8, dia 3.6. Let's start with the first one. And AutoCAD is prompting you to specify radius, but we need dia. So I'll go to diameter and I'll type 8.2. Obviously, you can directly type 4.1 if you know the radius. You can just type in, but in this case, I'll do that. I'll type the dia. Now again, I'll press enter and this will repeat the last command. So I'll go to center. Once again, I'll click on diameter and I'll type 4.8, enter again, the same center, again diameter, and 3.6. All right, so we have the three circles. Now we'll also make this circle of 5.7, although this one is a small arc, but just imagine that we have a complete circle. We'll trim off everything that is not necessary. So I'll go to circle, the same center, and this time we need to type in radius. So 5.7 and enter. Okay, we are done. Now look at this total gap. It is 12 and half of this should be 6. So we have the central line. We can make an offset on this side as well as on this side with a distance of 6 unit. So I'll go to offset now. I'll type in 6 and enter. And now I'll make an offset here on this side to the left, another one to the right. All right. Now we need to make another offset. As you can see, this line is tangent on this circle. So is this. So that means this line is at a distance of the radius of this circle. So its radius is 4.1 as diameter is 8.2. So the distance between this line and this line should be 4.1. So let's go to another offset. So offset 4.1, enter this line to the left, this line to the right. We are done. Now let's go to line tool again. I'll go to this point. I'll make this line and I'll press escape key. Now this gap is 1 unit, as you can see here. So again, I'll go to offset 1, enter this line, and I'll click upwards. Now this gap is 4 unit from this line. So again, we'll make another offset. So offset 4, enter this line and to the top. Now the center of these circles are at a distance of 2.5 and it's intersected by this line. So this line and this line. So that's the intersection point where the center is. So again, I'll go to offset and I'll make a line here which we don't see. We'll later on delete this line, but for now we need to make it. So I'll just go to offset and this distance is 2.5. So 2.5 and this line to the top. All right, so we have 4 of these lines and we have a lot of lines here which are completely not necessary. So we need to clean up our drawing a little bit. So let's first delete this line, the line at the center, we don't need it. And now I'll go to trim and I'll press enter. So now we don't need this line, we don't need this line. All right, it's cleaned. Also, we don't need this part of the line and this part of the line. We also don't need many of these things, but we'll delete those drawings later on. For now, I'll press escape and now I'll add these circular portions using fillet. As you can see, the fillet radius is 1.6. So I'll use this. I'll go to fillet. Now I'll select radius and I'll type in 1.6 for the radius. Now I'll select this line and I'll click right here. And the fillet is added, but unfortunately we don't have the line here anymore. So I'll go to line and I'll just make one line like this. I'll just touch it here, that's enough. So I'll go to fillet and once again radius, it should be 1.6 and this line and this line. All right, so we have it. Now we need to make our circles. So again, for making circle, we don't have the intersection point. For that, I'll go to line. I'll click on this point here and I'll extend it up to this point so that we have the intersection. I'll go to circle. I'll select this center. Now, the radius of circle is 1.52. Well, that's the diameter. And the second one is 2.4. So let's use these values. So I'll go to diameter 1.52 and press enter again. The same center, and this time the diameter is 2.4. So dia 2.4 and enter. All right, now we can delete this line and this line as well. These two were the reference lines. They're no longer needed. Now we need the same kind of circle here, but instead of making it, I'll make the mirror image. So I'll go to mirror. I'll select these two circles and enter. And now I'll click on this midpoint and then on this midpoint for the mirroring line. And I'll press enter and we'll have the mirror image like this. So as you can see, we are approaching very close to the end result. So before we do that, let's trim this extra part. So I'll go to trim, enter. I'll trim this part so that we have a clean picture here of what we need to make. And we just need to make this part of the drawing, which we can easily make using offset. So I'll go to offset again. And now this offset is 1.6, as you can see here. So let's type that 1.6. I'll select this line. I'll click to the left. I'll select this line, click to the right. Now this is 4.8. So I'll go to offset again. And distance is 4.8, enter. Now this line is offset at a distance of 4.8. Now all we need to do is just trim. That's it. So I'll go to trim, enter, and I'll trim this part, this part, this part, this tiny part right here, and this tiny part right here, and this part of the drawing. And I'll delete all of these extra lines. So I'll select these lines, and these two, and I'll delete them. And this is our end result. So now you can clearly see how we use these tools in a practical situation like this to make our drawings in AutoCAD. So in the last video, we'll talk about managing our drawing, adding symbols, and plotting our drawing.